Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Platoon Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ray Hennessy, and today we're joined with Trex Jones. Same old faces, but new setting. As you can see, we're in an actual studio for once. We don't have to hold our microphones anymore, which is pretty nice. So as you can see, only upgrades at the Platoon offices. Anyways, it's been a minute since we've last talked. We had a week-long break. We're finally now reconvening. And I think it'd be a good time to now talk about, it's 3 years away, but it's really already started, the 2028 election.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting right now with what we're seeing is the field is developing. We're seeing people start podcasts. We're seeing people become part of the institutions that are part of becoming a candidate. For example, Vance is going to be leading a fundraising party this Tuesday, so upcoming Tuesday for us.
Mhm.
And he's also going to be the treasury chair or vice president. Sorry, no,
He's the
treasury
finance chair, I thought,
finance chair.
of the RNC.
Yeah, RNC, and this is the first time this has happened. So what is
Well,
interesting?
the first time that a vice president is being the finance chair, usually it's left to someone who doesn't have a highly elected,
Yeah,
high responsibility position outside of being the finance chair, so they can focus on fundraising solely.
yeah, and so we'll see how that goes. But it definitely shows that he is trying to be the candidate, put himself as the person that will be the next Republican primary candidate and maybe president. But what do you think about Vance's chances in 28?
It,
And yeah,
it's so hard to say, having it 3 years away. I mean, I think the real killer of any incumbency bonus or, party incumbency bonus is just an economic downturn, which obviously we're feeling it right now. The Dow Jones, NASDAQ, every single metric of the economy, at least when you look at the stocks, has been going down. And, a lot of people wonder if it's a correction or if it's the beginning of a long slide. Remains to be seen. Everyone's freaking out over it, but I think, I think the arc of history is long, but it tends to favor the nothing ever happens, dude. So I think it's a good chance. It might hurt for a bit, but I think the economy is going to be the big decider on whether or not Vance is going to have a good chance to run. But I think, honestly, unless things go super, super awry, I don't really see a serious challenge to Vance on the Republican side because Trump basically chose Vance as like his chosen successor for the MAGA movement. Even if he doesn't have the charisma, as long as Trump decides to back Vance in the next 3 years, that endorsement says a lot for the Republican base.
yeah. I mean, I wanted to maybe put this in a couple different framing ways because I truly do believe Vance will be the nomination if things work out or things are seen to be perceived better at 2028 with the economy, with jobs, with global tensions. And so I think there's two different ways we have to look at this 2028 Republican primaries for the Republican side right now is if the Trump administration eases pains on the economy and also the stock market, and also if they can show, I guess, making peace with Ukraine, making peace in Israel and Gaza, and also protecting Taiwan, and really making sure that all these things happen. And if they don't do that, I do think there's a great chance that there will be somebody that has been able to distance themselves from candidates.
Yeah, I think it's funny talking about whether or not things are better, at least it feels better, because this reminded me. We spent the week in Arizona together. We had a spring break. And while we were in Arizona, we were keeping lightly up with the politics, very, very lightly, not very serious. Because we would rather be visiting the Grand Canyon and fishing and living a real life. So one funny thing though that reminds me of is kind of this idea that honestly I have no clue what's going on because I looked up. We got curious. We wanted to look at the price of eggs right now because we were talking about how we buy eggs. We are college students.
I thought this was going a completely different direction.
Oh really?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the eggs right now.
Yeah.
You can tell me what direction you thought this was going to go in a minute, but. Yeah. I thought it was funny because when I looked at the price of eggs and like the news about it, the top two articles, row in a row. The first one was by Newsweek, and it was titled "Egg Prices Plummet." The next article in that list was by the New York Times, and it was "Egg Prices Surge Again Even as Inflation Eases." Directly contradictory to each other.
And I still don't know.
I know the prices around here are somewhat better.
I was
But
able to get eggs the other day. I know on another episode I was talking about how I wasn't able to, but I thought you were going to talk about the In-N-Out burger and how it costs
oh,
$10, and you were very shocked by that.
well, there's a lot of things I learned from Arizona. Arizona's a beautiful state, by the way. It's not just desert. Fully exceeded my expectations. Coming from a guy who's from New Jersey, the most beautiful state in the union. Okay, guys, that wasn't funny. That was a serious statement, but whatever.
But okay.
Okay. So, obviously, you haven't seen Newark. Well, okay, so there's a few things I learned, which was very fascinating. One, the price of an In-N-Out burger. I am a big In-N-Out enjoyer now. It costs so a double burger, which is like 2 patties of cheese, 2 burger like patties, decent sized burger, fries and a milkshake cost me $11.50. That's insane. In New Jersey, that would have cost me like $19.50, $18.50 maybe, like nearing $20. If I go to one of those like artisan places with the guy with the bun hair and like the artisan shit on the walls, it would have been like 20 something. I guarantee you, $22. Got extra $6 for the truffle on the fries. So it just shocked me, the prices in Arizona, and just also the fact that it's not like some backwater area. We were in like the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, and yet these prices were low, and it's a lot of jobs were moving in, like the what was it, the Taiwan
semiconductors, yeah.
Yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that, that was
Yeah,
also really
I
interesting.
mean, they're coming in. I know there was the Chips and Science Act that brought a bunch of money. I believe Trump just finished negotiating the end of that bill with the semiconductor company from the Chips and Science Act. But
Yep.
yeah, it's bringing in a bunch of jobs. I forgot what the numbers were.
We drove past the plant on our way to Saguaro National Lake, I think.
Yeah.
And I think the cool thing about it was I looked it up. It was like initially it was going to be a $15 billion investment. Then they ended up boosting it to $30 billion, and then like last year or a year or two ago, they ended up jacking up to $66 billion. They're creating 3 fabrication plants to create the plant, and it's creating like 20,000 jobs through the supply chain of creating the plant, and like an additional I don't remember, a couple thousand steady jobs to actually like man the plant. So it's really cool seeing the jobs that are getting moved in there, high paying jobs and a lot of industry going through. And then also the prices are just remained astoundingly low compared to at least what I'm used to on the East Coast.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. And if that perception can be used everywhere across America for Vance in 2028, it will really be great for them. Because Trump's termed out,
Mhm.
and
We'll see about that.
y-
Third term.
hey man, on Kalshi they have a 14% chance of it happening for some reason. But if that happens, I mean, you can really see probably some ideas of campaigning like in 1984, Good Morning America, where all Reagan really did was how amazing things are. Inflation's down, marriage is up, family net worths are going up. So it will really be interesting to see that. But I want to go to the dark side of this and go towards the Ron DeSantis case.
Oh, brother.
Because I used to be a big Ron DeSantis fan. Then he kind of fell off.
Yeah,
and-
I was never a fan of him too much. I thought he was the definition of a boomer conservative.
Well, yeah, he was trying to outright Trump on some social issues,
But, like on the most cringe way.
yeah, and I dropped my support for him. Okay, I dropped my support for him, but I do think that Ron DeSantis could get the nomination if everything blows up in Trump's face under the Trump Vance administration. Because I mean, let's say economic concerns don't get better. Let's say Ukraine maybe goes for another couple months, and let's talk about Israel and Palestine, where
The ceasefire, I think, has been
it's
undone.
failed.
Yeah.
So it failed, and it's like if that keeps worsening, and then let's say a new war starts somehow with Taiwan, if China feels that they're in position to do that, it could very easily be a Ron DeSantis case, because I think that he can present that I'm not part of this administration. I think he's about to be termed out. I don't know if when his term ends, but he's about to be termed out, and he can now say the MAGA movement was good, but now we need something different, and now he can distance himself from that.
Mhm.
And I think that is a great case for him, and that's what I'm talking about. Is you really have to have both sides of it.
Yeah, I will say DeSantis, his term runs out in 2026, and he is termed out, so he can't run for re-election. I don't necessarily know though, because I'll say I think that even if you want to make that angle where he's not part of the MAGA movement, he's different from the administration. I think in a lot of ways, quacks like a duck, looks like a duck. It is a duck. Like he's like really much MAGA adjacent, especially when he was trying to outright Trump socially. I think he's very much MAGA adjacent, and because of that, I think he'll get like swept down in the not state level but nationally. I don't think if there's no energy for Vance, there won't be energy for DeSantis.
Well, yeah, but I think this is where they're different in some ways. Because I think if I remember correctly, Ron DeSantis might have liked saw some value in the war in Ukraine, if I remember correctly. This is me kind of just talking, but
I'm not sure.
I think if he can really draw a difference. I'm trying to recall memories of his podcasts and stuff like that he's been on, but I see what you're saying. But there was a reason why he did decent in the 2020 or not 2020 2024 election primaries. I think that's because there is a base that kind of likes him and kind of look at him as something that is not Trump. There are Republicans that are very not for Trump, but for a MAGA-esque character.
Well, yeah. If things definitely don't go Vance's way, I definitely think he'll throw his hat in the ring. I mean, he did that during the Republican primaries, which I thought was always going to end up going to Trump no matter what.
Yeah.
That was just like a way to get their names out there. And then he did it again with the Newsom DeSantis debate. He's trying to get his name out there. I think he wants it really badly.
Yeah.
I just don't see a lot of energy for him. I think there's a lot of dissipated energy that if he just held out and just didn't make any runs until like now, I think it would have been a good chance. But I think he honestly, like, the sun rose and is set with him.
Yeah.
And I think he'll just be known as that influential governor from Florida.
Yeah.
That being said, though, there are some other options which I feel like at this point they're just long shots.
Well, yeah, and I want to start off with this one person because we're going to talk about a couple of candidates that are from states that are opposite of their party.
Yeah.
But they are able to win with actually great margins. And I'm going to talk about Phil Scott from Vermont.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have the 2024 election map from Vermont, if I get pulled up really quickly.
And it's funny because according to this chart, like Phil Scott's not even up there.
Yeah. And
Sarah Huckabee Sanders is there, not even him.
Yeah. And so when you look at this chart, what we can see is yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, Max.
And when you can see for Vermont though is Kamala Harris won it by 30 so points over Trump. She won it with 64.4% of the vote.
Yep.
And last general election for the governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, he won the state with 73.4% of the vote.
Wow.
And he, by the way, he's been governor since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
The governor's term in Vermont is 2 years, sorry. 2 years. Every 2 years they have to run. And he's been there since then. He's won with like a 50+ margin every single time. And what I find interesting is, like, I definitely don't see him as a main candidate. I definitely see him as a vice president candidate for a Vance or a Ron DeSantis to kind of get different East Coast people. Because right now I don't see a lot of people being from the West that would help a ticket like Vance or like Ron DeSantis. Coming from my home state, Arizona, there's only one name that comes up to me is Karen Taylor Robeson, and she's running for governor right now for the election of 2025 or 26. So if she can win that, then I could see her being a vice president nominee. But if the Republicans want to go for a different type of strategy and try to put a blue state or more blue-leaning states into danger, or the blue wall, I think it's called.
The blue wall.
Yeah, I think that's
that Trump won.
Trump won, but he won by slim margins.
Right.
I think Vance could win those if he had somebody like Phil Scott.
Well, what'll be a great question to ask is what exactly will be the role of the vice president in this election? Because historically, the vice presidency was the guy to get extra votes, to swing a couple extra states, a couple extra people. That was not the case at all with Trump's Vance pick. Trump's Vance pick was a doubling down of the MAGA agenda, saying that he's serious. Trump chose Vance not thinking he was going to win more states with it.
I will though say though he was trying to get this Midwest, trying to show like an American dream. I think that's what JD Vance was trying to be, and kind of show kind of the effects of forgetting about the Rust Belt and trying to be that candidate. So I think that was kind of his appeal and his little angle. I do think it's a doubling down on MAGA, but I do think he did have that little value of trying to hit that Midwest range.
Yes, but I mean, I think the whole Midwest angle was already pretty set and done, which is why I do think, like I said, it was a doubling down of the MAGA agenda, which includes a lot of it was reindustrialization, de-rust the Rust Belt, bring back the jobs, and kind of like Vance would just be this poster child for it to be like, I'm really serious about this, and I think so far it's been proven that he has been. That being said,
let's get the other candidates that are listed on the polling.
Let's look at them real quick.
So I see some great names up here that I just am so proud to see up there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, the staunch Republican himself. I mean, what does that show to you for the Republican Party?
We really don't like atrazine in our water. That's what that means to me.
Or fluoride.
Or yeah, I don't like atrazine in my Fruity Pebbles, and I don't like fluoride in my water. That's right.
But yeah, I mean, so that's what I mean. This poll came from me looking up Ron DeSantis. You can see he has 7% of the polling out of 450 people that are Republican, and one of that ticket. JD Vance is the first pick at 46%. Nikki Haley, very shockingly, is at 7% as well.
That scares me. The neocon elements are dying to get back into office.
And then Marco Rubio is at 4%. He's part of the cabinet. I'm trying to look at anybody else.
I wonder how Vivek Ramaswamy's doing nowadays.
He's running for governor in Ohio, and I honestly, we could definitely see a run in the future if he wins the Ohio governor. I see a lot of people that are going to probably run for governor, win the governor spot, and definitely run at the end of their term very quickly. But from this list, do you see anyone else that are really serious contenders for the 2028 ticket? Not even Youngkin?
I think Youngkin knows better than throw his hat in. I like Youngkin a lot.
Me too.
I think he knows better than to throw his hat in.
Do you think Youngkin would run if in our worst case scenario world? Runs, he goes against JD Vance. He goes, I ran a state that had been like blue for many times. I won the state. JD Vance and Trump failed. I know economics. I have I did great for
I just don't think Youngkin wants it right now. I think he can wait. He can wait. He can afford to wait. He can be governor a little while longer. He doesn't need to.
He's getting termed out though.
Yeah, he can do other stuff.
But now switching to the Democrats, let's start with maybe the polling data first, and then jump to I think my personal favorites, our personal favorites on some of them, and look at that. And
yeah, this is an interesting angle. Who the actual Democrat would be. So Kamala Harris, 33%. I thought America doesn't like losers. Explain that to me.
So losers actually she's not a loser to most voters. There's a poll that came out recently right after election, November 9th. It was polled from November 9th to the 12th. And that it said that she only had a 7% blame rate from the voters, or 6%. Sorry, voters blamed Joe Biden, 24%, and then just thought it was a bad year for Democrats, 53%, and 17% were not sure.
But this is, of course, among the Harris voters. This is among Harris voters. This is what the Democrats think. So,
I mean, that's kind of who matters for a primary, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess another element to look at this is who's going to be the primary candidate that should win, who will be the primary candidate that will win, is another way to frame this issue. Yeah. Because I think Harris will win. I don't think she should be the nominee. Because I think there's a lot better candidates that could actually win for the Democrats.
See, that's interesting because I think the Democratic machine would be hesitant to put up Harris again. Depending on how, again, it all matters on how what good or bad the Republican presidency
does. She might run for governor, and I think there's a few other names that throw their hat in their name. There's somebody I forgot the representative or Senate, no, Representative Katie Porter. Thank you, Miles. Katie Porter threw her hat in the ring. And so we'll see with that. I mean, if she can win the governor race in California, I mean, there's a few people that have come out of California that were governors and became president. So
Yeah, like to be Gavin Newsom, your favorite governor from California, right?
my favorite governor, I love Gavin Newsom. But I mean, Reagan, Nixon, maybe that might be Harris or Newsom now. But jumping to Newsom, if we want to go back to the polls really quickly and see, he's at 7%, and actually, Pete Buttigieg is at 10% above him, 3% lead.
I think Newsom is the most interesting case study because I don't know if he started, but I started seeing it recommended in my feed, his podcast, like This is Newsom, and then the title's called like, and This is X. He interviewed Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, Tim Walz, and I think he interviewed one other person that came out recently. I think there was a new podcast here. Let me see.
But
Gavin Newsom podcast. Yeah.
But going with Gavin Newsom really quickly, and we'll talk to him, and we'll go back to Harris and talk about the blame, and then we'll talk about our favorite candidates. I think with Gavin Newsom, what's interesting is a lot of people that I talk to that are left leaning or are just partisan Democrats.
Oh, Michael Savage 8 days ago. My
Yeah,
bad.
they say that Newsom's actually a lot more conservative than most people think compared to his state. And I find that interesting because to me, I find him very liberal. But that's from me looking from the outside and not being in the Californian politics of the state house and all those things of
Well,
that sort.
it's hard gauging how he really feels, at least when looking at what he says now, because he's trying to. I think it's obvious he's priming himself for a presidential run, and I think he realized that if he really wants to win, he has to kind of shift to the right a bit, especially on social issues. I think a big jaw-dropping moment was when he was talking to Charlie Kirk on the topic of like trans sports.
Yeah,
and he was like, "Yeah, I just don't think like it's fair that these trans women are like outperforming like
I found
birth women."
I found his response to that very not provocative in the sense of like he wasn't like going like no they should be banned and all that blah blah blah. It's unfair, very calm. But I think what we're talking about is I think he is angling himself to be a little bit more right. I think there's some people that I mean we talked about this on the gender divide episode, kind of like how masculinity is splitting. I don't know if he's trying to be appealing to the masculinity crowd.
Well,
I
let
know
me
Charlie
ask you.
Kirk did say podcasting is pretty masculine. So, and
Well, let me ask you. Even though he lacks a pretty strong beard, do you think Gavin Newsom could be a beacon of masculinity?
Sure. I don't know. I don't. It's hard to define, but
Could he could he give the Democrat alternative to what
by
being
Charlie
a man
Kirk's
means?
definition, he is. He's fighting intellectually in this battleground. He's going out there and getting an intellectual wilderness. He's getting out there and fighting.
That is the most I can't fight, I'm a poli-sci nerd response I've ever heard in my life. Oh, you're manly because you're fighting in the intellectual arena. Oh, you're a man.
Well, you know what, Charlie
It's like
Kirk,
the blind leading the blind.
Charlie Kirk's, he tells us that Democrats can't do that.
Dude, that reminds me of there's this one philosopher named Julius Evola, self-described super fascist, by the way, this guy. And he said that in society there are 3 types of honorable people in society. And he said like the first kind are like the warrior class who are like fighters and soldiers. He said the second kind were like the clergy, like men of God. And he said the third kind were philosophers and intelligentsia who create like ideology. Just so happened to put himself up there with one of the 3 honorable classes of society. Everyone else is not like an ubermensch.
So you're
or
saying
whatever.
like Charlie Kirk, how he's like, I'm masculine because I go on podcasts.
People try to rationalize themselves to themselves.
Well, and also he has Steve Bannon on, which
That was shocking.
I'm honestly, I watched a couple episodes. I like it.
The dark lord of right populism himself, Steve Bannon.
Yeah, but then you would see them kind of trying, or Newsom agreeing, but then also attacking Steve Bannon by being like, that's what California does. There's progressive. We have a progressive tax system just like you want.
Yeah, and then Benny goes, no, no,
You guys are taxed too much.
You guys are techno-feudalism.
You know Elon, you know him, but I guess what value do you see for this for Newsom, and how could it actually help him with name recognition, all these things, electoral college, or is this going to be a failure?
I think it honestly makes Gavin look a bit more. I'll use Dion. He looks a bit more based, to be honest with you. And honestly,
chiller attitude.
Yeah, like he's not some high stuck up like femboy who's like leader of the most progressive state in the country. You know, that kind of perception. So I honestly think it helps his perception a lot that he's actually willing to talk to guys like Bannon, willing to talk to guys like on the right who are considered like real poster childs of like the right intellectual, maybe not Charlie Kirk, but like right intellectual thought.
You mean Newsom's not a soybean drinking liberal?
Believe it or
He's
not,
a masculine warrior.
I don't go that far. That might be overcorrection. But I think what it does, it legitimately gives people, especially men, which the Democrats, you know, need to win the male vote again. Not again, but they need to reaffirm their male votes, especially with Latino men. The fact that they lost that was a shocker to them. I think it's a massive wake up that they need to also they need to like start catering to males a bit more than they thought.
Well, some people say that Tim Walz was,
excuse my patriarchy.
Yes. Tim Walz was kind of a candidate that was supposed to help with that, but
he didn't. He failed
but
at it.
I think he didn't fail. I think the campaign kind of like nerfed him in the sense of like he used to post like funny tweets.
Yeah.
Starts joining the campaign, doesn't post the funny tweets. He used to have videos of him with a shotgun going hunting and being like, yeah, hunt. And then, well, there was a clip of him failing to like either reload or pump a shotgun. But I think like Tim Walz could have been very great for Harris if they let him be him.
Well, I think Tim Walz was supposed to be like that friendly uncle, you know, from the Midwest who, you know, like, which would have been a fine angle. But I do agree. The reason why he failed was because he ended up going too much in line with the Harris angle. That's like, you know, Brat Summer was about the least masculine like push they could have done. Like, all respect to them. Like I thought it was really
there
fun.
There should have been Brat, and then there should have been Duck season. Okay,
Brat Summer into Duck Winter.
Yeah, I think honestly, I feel like that could have been great for them.
Duck Fall.
But yeah, so okay, so case for Newsom. What's the world that he becomes the nominee, or will he not become the nominee because there's no world that he becomes the nominee?
Honestly, I think that Democrats, I think Republicans do great. Democrats do great. Newsom has a good chance of being nominee. Republicans tank. Newsom still has a good chance to be a nominee.
Okay, so
I think he has a good chance.
But do you think? Okay? So with this poll, you see he's losing to Harris right now.
Right.
Do you think that he will be able to counter Harris, and what angles do you think he'll be able to counter Harris?
So when we look at Harris, and you have to look at it, it's like among the voters who voted for Harris. You also got to remember the turnout for Harris was terrible, especially in the inner cities, especially among Hispanic men, especially among just like black men in the inner cities. Now, a lot of people say that one of the foundation or pillars of the movement of the Democratic Party is black women. And the question is, how strongly will black women, especially in the primaries, back Harris? That could be Newsom's kind of heel to this whole thing.
Well, yeah, and the Democrats are doing a different primary system. They're starting in South Carolina, if that's correct, or Georgia, and instead of New Hampshire, Iowa.
Well, I'm not sure how the Democrats are doing, but where they start really much matters, because I watched a very interesting video about Carter. Did you ever watch a video about Carter, how he ended up becoming president?
No.
His primaries, like he was like not in serious contention for a very long time, and then the primaries he created the theory of like his momentum, momentum theory of primaries. It wasn't he created, but like the guys behind him, and it was only because of where they started the primaries that Carter ended up getting the primary.
And with Biden, it was interesting because in 2020. His primaries was looking bad as it started in New Hampshire, more of that East Coast. But once it came down to the South, Biden picked up momentum from black voters and kind of destroyed that whole Bernie Sanders
Bernie wave
and like momentum. So I do agree with that. I was thinking about that because when you look at these candidates, I would love to know demographically who supports them the most, and then compare that to the election map or primaries.
We need Iden back.
Yes, we do need Iden back. He would be able to tell you that right now. But I think we should move to another candidates, and I want to start talking about my personal favorites
Okay, that's fine.
and talk about how they will match up compared to all four of these people,
Yeah.
and and maybe our predictions later.
Yeah, living in a post-grand coup of the Democratic primary system.
The Democrat that I think should be the nomination, one of two, is Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky. And now let's look at Kentucky's 2024 election map. Look at how much Trump won that state by.
That's a lot of red. 64.6% went to Trump.
And a Democrat runs that state. Andy Beshear, he won his state in the last election in 2023 but 52.5% versus 47.5%.
Right.
And this was actually a 4.5% jump from his previous election. So this was his re-election.
And what year was his first election?
His first election was in let me scroll down, 2019.
Gotcha.
And he won 49.2.
So that was still in the era of Trump.
Yeah. So he's a great Trump fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And also, just some background about him. He became the attorney general, sued a lot of drug companies, or tried to sue a bunch of drug companies for being...
Please continue.
Don't talk about him. Don't talk about the drug companies. They're after us. But Andy Beshear, he sued
that caught on
opioid
camera?
companies.
Certainly.
I think that's great. Are we still going?
Yeah, we're still.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back.
Andy
I'm
Beshear.
not cutting that.
Great. So Andy Beshear, he was attorney general. Then he runs for governor. My case for him is he's winning deep red states, and he ended a trifecta government in a deep red state.
Yeah, I think I remember watching a YouTube video. It's like one of those like news channels that does like one of those really good like 10, 12 minute like mini docs.
Yeah.
Like interviewing Andy Beshear is like why you as a Democrat are holding on to one of the like super red states. And he's like, I'm just like I represent the blue collar well, like in this state. Like this like literally the Democrats need to shed their like not gonna curse. The Democrats need to shed their I don't want to get too, they need to shed their like
You don't want to get sued?
no, I don't want to use
He's
what
really
did I
think
say?
people are after him.
No, I just don't want to try to use grotesque language like as much as I do.
Well, they
Try
need to
keep
get
it down.
rid of not being.
They're university elitism.
Yeah,
they're-
well, yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
No,
Very
no, I
grotesque.
was I
Okay.
know. I'm keeping it
But
very
after the 2024 election,
business professional.
he wrote a co-op saying that
Op-ed.
what op-ed. Thank you so much.
Keep it a business professional.
Thank you. What I offer instead is a way forward.
Yes.
Beshear wrote, I won re-election 12 months ago by 5 points in a state that Donald Trump just carried by 30 points. This is him, I think, showing that he is going to run. He is a powerful contender. Now, the problem with him was that polling I was looking at, people don't know who he is. I think it was like 3 out of 4 Democrats don't know his name, don't care who he is.
As is with usually the good ones.
So we'll see. I think Andy Beshear is somebody that is definitely on the radar, and I think if primary voters of the Democrat Party want a winner and they vote on wanting a winner, they'll go with him.
Well, I think he's a good pick. He also represents like a masculine edge to the party. I think more than Newsom does. But I think it's one of those things where it depends on the primaries. If he can win the first couple, his name gets out there, like Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people knew him beforehand, but you win the first primary, win the second primary. Now your name's up there. You get the cachet. It can increase real quick how people know you.
And so then I want to jump to Josh Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro,
And,
Pennsylvania.
I mean, he was in the contending for vice president with Mark Kelly and Tim Walz and him. And he's been the governor for Pennsylvania for
a while
now. He was also attorney general
He's
as well.
a proven, capable technocrat. I think one thing that was really cool was that he made it so that you no longer needed a college degree to work for him, or in certain segments of the government.
Worked for him.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I no, I think Josh Shapiro is one of these Democrat governors that can really show that big government's not scary. And like for example, when the bridge collapsed in Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
he removed all this red tape, and I think it was like under 10 days
Got it
that
back.
bridge
Mhm.
was rebuilt. And something to me like that alone
Says a lot.
says so much.
Says a lot.
Because there's people the image you could paint is you're driving down your road, right? You see that construction for months,
Right.
okay? You see it for months. He's like, a whole bridge collapsed. And you know what I did? I got it built in 8 days. I was able to deregulate and remove red tape, and I moved this country forward because of a big government. So I think he's a very good case to be opposed to cutting government
No.
and showing government's not bad.
Now, here's the thing about Josh Shapiro, and I don't mean to say this like, he's Jewish.
No,
Now,
no, and that's the thing because I've talked about him before.
that might have costed him his vice presidential pick
Yeah.
earlier. And judging by how things might be with the next election, judging by how the Israel-Palestine things continue on, that could be a serious restraint.
I think it could be a restraint or a strength. For example, I did talk about this with some friends. They're like, he's Jewish. And the example of this is John F. Kennedy. He's Catholic. And that was a very big problem for Kennedy. And Kennedy branded himself as a president for all with the Kennedy, Kennedy, Kennedy ads. So
the question is, though, were people of their own parties, of his own party, saying that the Catholics were committing a, oh, there goes the whole shelf. Maybe we should stop this conversation right where it is. We were going a little too deep. But our
stop. But
I honestly think that, think about it. The Israel-Palestine protest vote or non-vote against Harris really killed her in certain states. Depending on the momentum of things going into 2028, if there's still going to be tension, there could be a lot of discontent.
Well, that is true, but look at Democrats like John Fetterman that are getting a lot of support. Even though he's progressive, they're getting a lot more recognition and support because they are supporting Israel.
See, I see the other view where progressives are actually very unhappy with him because he hasn't been voting progressive as they thought he was going to be.
And I think trying to be progressive is what maybe the Democrats did not. They either have to go far enough or have to back away from it. And I think with Josh Shapiro, I think he is a good way to get away from being progressive. And there's been polls out there that showed Republicans would even vote for Josh Shapiro if he ran for president. I think he's a candidate that doesn't need the progressive wing because he will take Republicans instead. Because I think it was college-educated Republicans he would take. And if he can hit that demographic a lot more and other different branches of the Republicans, I think he doesn't need the progressive wing.
See, that's interesting, but then I wonder how that plays out in the Midwest states.
I don't even know how the Midwest states are with the whole Palestine-Israel crisis. Because as you and me went to a a luncheon or something with Chuck Todd.
Yes.
Where we listened to him talk about the 2024 election.
Yeah.
And he talked about if the progressives that are Palestine supporters voted for Cornel West or didn't vote, the state would have flipped to Trump.
Right.
And then Wisconsin, did it? Yeah, Wisconsin did. And so what that shows to me is I think that I think he has to attack that base because I think you cannot win the progressive voters out because trying to please those progressives that want the Palestine crisis to be different is going to be hard because there's a lot of people that will not support that.
But it's not even the progressives. It is like just Muslim voters in general, especially in these very high Muslim percentage communities in certain these Rust Belt states.
Do you think they will double down on not voting for a Democrat again? I think
some of the ones I talk to, not from the Midwest, but some of the Muslims I know, they care a lot more about
I get that, but would they want another Trump presidency?
I think that their view of it is that this is me speaking on their behalf, but it's like in their view, they're going to get a Zionist government no matter what. But it's like they have a better chance of maybe converting the Democrats away from it. The Republicans are just going to be no matter what.
Yeah, I guess. It might be one of those cases where it's like the lesser of two evils,
Literally.
and
in their
like
view.
for them, and I guess that is Josh Shapiro's weakness. I think
Mhm.
is his support for Israel, which I kind of can see as a strength if he wants to not go for the progressive angle.
The forbidden Josh Shapiro versus Thomas Massey 2028 election.
Oh God, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. But so we already talked about the polling. I know Governor Whitmer is somebody that people talk about.
Yeah, that surprised me actually.
Um,
I mean, it's low. What I'm surprised about more is Ocasio-Cortez being at 7% and Buttigieg being at 10%.
yeah, but
Buttigieg
like,
being at 10%, I think, is pretty high.
I'm not shocked by that though. I mean, he has cabinet experience. I saw him as Kennedy-esque in the sense of he's a young guy, very educated, he speaks multiple languages. He has military service, and you know,
I see that. I just don't know if he has the, and I guess I'll use this word, like, I don't know if he has like the charisma to actually win an election, though. At the end
yeah,
of the
but
day.
like didn't like Joe Biden. I mean, like,
Whoa, Joe Biden was the candidate that rallied the coalition that stopped Trump. 81 million votes, more than any other person in history. You're telling me there was no charisma there?
okay. So
Whoa, what do you mean, okay? Are you questioning?
no,
did that-
I'm just saying. Okay, so my question to you is, if it's all about charisma,
It's not all about charisma. I just think Buttigieg, like, lacks the it factor to be president. Like, in the fact that JFK had a shit ton of charisma, and like a shit ton of it factor for some reason.
that's
No,
he's just from Boston, you know.
He also actually never mind. But
So okay, so Ray, who's your pick to win the Democratic primaries?
Mark Cuban, no doubt. I'm joking. Not Mark
and then
Cuban.
who do you think should win it?
Okay, so I think that realistically, it's going to be maybe an Andy Bashar if he really puts his hat in the ring, or Newsom. I think the default is Newsom, in my opinion. I don't think he has amazing support, but I think the Democrats will rally around him if necessary.
So you think Andy Bashir should win it?
I think Andy Bashar would be a good pick. I think Josh Shapiro would be another good pick, but I think he'd be more restrained in terms of his, like. I think the ceiling for Andy Bashir is higher than Josh Shapiro, if that makes sense. I think there's less you can put on Andy Bashir than you can on Josh Shapiro.
Okay, so you think there's less flack?
Yes.
Okay.
I think Bashir would be a solid pick. Now, do I think he'll win it? I think he's going to have a tough time against Newsom, who has a lot more name recognition, a lot more brand behind the name. Like, regardless of whether or not you like him or not, you can't deny he's one of the most well-known politicians in America.
Yeah. So,
Well,
I want to get your. Oh, wait, what?
I do want to talk a bit about Ruben Gallego, though. What are your thoughts on that? You being an Arizonian.
I think he's too. I mean, he's kind of new to the scene.
Mhm.
He was a congressman for 12 years. Now he's a senator,
Mhm.
and he's new. And I mean, I'd have to look at his. I mean, if you don't mind, really quickly pulling up Ruben Gallego's race against Carrie Lake. I don't even think he.
Max, pull that up.
I don't think he really beat her up or
Beat her up. Whoa.
by that many points. Yeah, I mean, it was a close election, 50.1%.
Yeah.
I think he is somebody that is not energetic enough. I think he's somebody that would not be able to compete. And if I was a Democrat and I wanted to win Arizona, I'd pick Mark Kelly. And yeah, like if I'm a East or Midwest Democrat, I'm picking Mark Kelly because I think Ruben Gallego is just. I mean, and Carrie Lake, by the way, she lost like 6 points against Mark Kelly. She came within 2.3 points of winning a Senate election against Ruben Gallego.
Carrie Lake and
That
winning
is
an
my answer of
oxymoron.
why he cannot run for president. He can barely win against Carrie Lake.
To be honest, if it was any Republican slightly less unhinged as Carrie Lake, they probably would have won.
Yeah, no, that's
So-
I mean, I've talked to you about this many times. I do think Arizona's still a red state.
Mhm.
They just don't
Felt like it.
They just don't like MAGA, super MAGA all the time in the
Super
state.
MAGA.
They like voted for Trump, but not Carrie Lake.
Yeah.
But so if I'm a Democrat and I pick Andy Beshear, I'm picking Mark Kelly to win.
Mhm.
But,
then-
yeah,
If you think, sorry, just make sure. If you think, Beshear should be the nominee, who do you think would be the good vice?
Mark Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Mark Kelly. I mean, because I think that would be great. You don't really need Newsom because that is a, what's it called? California is a Democratic stronghold. So I really see that trying to win Arizona, which would hurt Republicans a lot, would be better for that.
All right, then I'm curious. Going back to the Republican side, who do you think would be Vance's VP pick?
If Vance wins and Karen Taylor Robeson of Arizona wins governor race in 26, I think she'd be a great pick.
Mhm.
She is not very MAGA oriented, or super outspoken MAGA. She got the Trump endorsement, and there's a few articles from local newspapers that are like, this shows that Trump wants to win. And I was talking to you about this, that it looks like the candidates that Trump's endorsing, based off Karen Taylor Robeson, because Andy Biggs, a very MAGA Freedom Caucus person, is running for the governor nomination in the Republican primaries, didn't get the Trump endorsement.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting because a lot of people are saying he's just going to endorse the most MAGA-esque, the most ardent defender, supporter of MAGA, but it actually seems he's being a little bit more purposeful with who he picks.
Well, yeah, you and me talked about this. I think this is not legacy building, but also I don't know if Arizona has a redrawing of districts soon, or anything, but like this will help with a lot of things of, hey, like if I get a good governor in there that's not going to scare the people off, that people really like, and that governor wraps their arms around me and goes, vote for this guy, JD Vance, my legacy will carry on.
Well, it's not just, legacy, also just policy. A lot of what Trump has done, if he really wants it to stick and not just get rolled back in 4 years, he needs to have Republican rule for the next, I would say, like decade, really. Yeah. If he really wants to have his reforms cemented, you need to have Republicans really maintain office who share that vision and actually let the cement dry, basically. Because right now, everything he's doing, gutting USAID, closing, he signed the order, I think, closing Department of Education.
Yeah.
He actually did it. We'll see if it stands.
Yeah.
But if those things go through, if these things get challenged in the court and they still stay juggled in the air by the time he's out, Democrats right in there saving it all. Yeah. So, just on a purely political view, if Trump wants to keep what he does and really, if you want to talk about legacy building policy, have it last for the next 100 years of American policy, he needs to have the next 4 years go his way. He needs to have the next decade go his way.
Yeah. And so who do you think would be, for Democrats, good president, vice president, and Republicans?
So I don't, this is a good question because so for the Republican Party as it stands right now, I think it should be JD Vance, because I think honestly, if it's not JD Vance, it's going to cause too much disruption in the party. It's going to cause a lot of rifts, a lot of power vacuuming, basically. I think right now the structure of the Republican Party, it's very honestly stable at the moment with Trump. And I think that Trump has successfully picked Vance. It'll stay stable after Trump's out. And I still think Trump is going to have a heavy hand outside behind the shadow. Now, I don't think he's the conniving, I'm going to be secret president for the next, rest of my life. But he's going to have an influence. I don't think you can deny he's going to have an influence. I think Vance is going to have the real seat of power after. But I think Vance, and then honestly, I don't know. I think that it should not be, well, I guess it's no secret. I don't like the neocons. I pray to God they don't do some sort of neocon pick. Otherwise, half the movement's going to be rolling in their grave. The Bannonites are going to be rolling in their grave.
My question to you is, do you think they will try to keep it in house.
I think so.
So Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum.
I was thinking Marco Rubio, honestly. I
And-
think he might be a solid pick.
Well, I was thinking Marco Rubio might run, as there's some people. Well, there are some people doing analysis saying that Trump hasn't really picked a favorite.
Yeah.
This was a month or so. I think he's kind of now becoming more clear picking a favorite, but he's doing that to keep power in his executive branch and kind of be like, who's going to be the next one? I'll pick.
Well, I think honestly, yes and no. I think the way it naturally set up, I think Vance would be a perfect pick, and it would also cause the least amount of disruption. You have Marco Rubio to double down the Latino male vote.
Yeah.
I think that's a great kind of not handout, but like reach out to the Latino male, kind of solidify and keep that gain, that majority gain now. And I also think that effectively Marco Rubio has detransitioned from neocon. He gave, I know, I'm fixated on the neocons because I think that they have been one of the most disruptive, painful ideological forces in our country that have led us to extreme pain. But like he gave like a really interesting like briefing on kind of the view of the administration going into like how to deal with issues, and it was very much like a paleocon, America first, restraint view of global affairs, which I resonated with deeply. And so because of that, I think Rubio has proven himself so far to be apt, and he also was just a capable guy in my view.
Do you think having Rubio is just a doubling down of MAGA? Because Rubio comes from Florida, and Florida is pretty red.
I mean, I don't look at it in the sense of like, he's picking Florida to double down. I mean, it kind of is because he's keeping it in house. But I think the greater thing is like he's doubling down on trying to win the Latino vote.
Sure. Okay.
Because I think that the future of the Republican Party is a white Latino coalition. If you look at it, the way it's trending.
Yeah.
And I think that will have deep implications for how the party is going to look in the future.
Yeah.
And then for the Democrats, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm a partisan hack. What can I say? I hope
we have
they
a
put
list right here, man. I mean,
I hope they put Stephen A. Smith up with Jon Stewart as his vice.
Oh, hold on. That Jon Stewart note. There was somebody saying that he actually is a very good candidate.
Who's the somebody?
Stick figure man off of YouTube.
Are you serious?
No, and I'll give you the pitch because honestly, the reasoning was pretty good. He has talked about many issues on his show. He has engaged with conversations across the aisle and attacked them, and can address them very well. He's a outsider to the establishment.
The anti-Trump.
He could be progressive without sounding progressive, and I think that is something they need a new salesperson. And I do think it is kind of a joke, but at the same time, not as crazy.
But then, do you think? Okay, well then, at the end of the day, do you think the Democrats are willing to choose an outsider? Because here's the argument against an outsider. Really, if you look at it in terms of like a more institutional friendly lens, it's that the Republicans let in an outsider like Trump, and look how he completely discombobulated the party and made it a complete party hostile to all institutions and everything holy to the country. Do the Democrats really want to risk something like that happening again?
And here's my point to you. The Democrats lost in 24. They let a majority happen in the Senate and the House.
Yeah, but it was just a bad year.
True, but I'm saying
56% of Democrats think it was just a bad year.
I think if they look, they go, because this is early. I think if Harris, let's say Harris doesn't run, Jon Stewart, I think, has a great chance. Because he's an outsider that has not been part of the programs that has failed. He doesn't have a lot of baggage with governing. He can walk through there and say, "You can what? I mean, here's my shows. You can't challenge me on my policy management." Newsom has a wildfire that he could be attacked on. All these candidates have a bunch of scandals versus Jon Stewart.
The thing with the outsider angle is that usually the outsider comes in attacking the institutions, attacking saying that needs to be changed. The Democrats have taken up a pretty like institution defensive line, especially against Trump in his like view of gutting the institutions. So you have an outsider coming in defending the institutions.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be curious to see how it works out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested to see him put his hat in the ring. I'd be interested to see anyone. I hope Stephen A. Smith puts his hat in the ring for all I care. I hope the most random wacko Republicans put their hat in the ring. I want to see some really, really entertaining. This is sad, but I want to see some entertaining primaries. Okay,
You want to see some Paul Gosar and Annie Biggs in there? You do.
I want to see that, not for the actual value, because like the first presidential primaries on both parties are always like just a shit show. The first one. And it's not until it gets narrowed down to like the few people does it like actually get interesting.
Yeah.
The first one is just like, how can I get my sound bited and sound based to my constituents? So
yeah, we'll see.
we'll see. A lot to be seen, a lot to be, figured out. But we're just here watching. We're just here with a shelf on the ground, figuring it out as we go. But hey, thanks for coming on, by the way.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by the Ox Institute. For more information to keep up with them, follow them at oxinstitute.org. This episode was also brought to you by our producer, Miles Moorfield. Thank you.